Time to bring in Dr. Wes Crenshaw. Comes in every other week here on Wednesdays. Thanks for being here again.
Nice to be here.
Yeah, let's get right into our topic today. And again, you brought in Sarah was here a couple of weeks ago, too.
Yes, she's home for the summer, and I thought we should put her to good use while we have a chance. She has a lot of good things to
She goes to
talk
Cornell,
about.
right? Just finished up her freshman year.
Yeah. So one of the things that's been interesting, the last couple of years, I've had more freshmen that I see on my caseload than really ever before. Part of that is because I'll have kids that I see that are in high school, in area high schools here in the city. And then they go to college, and sometimes we'll continue with video conferencing, so it makes it more possible to get a broader range of experience around the country. And the thing that has been on really everyone's mind, particularly young women, is this idea of a rape culture on campus. And we've kind of worked more of that into our book, Consent-Based Sex Education, than we'd originally intended because it's such a powerful topic. And I think one of the things I've learned is that the branding of the idea of rape culture is not probably very good branding, even though I think it's a real and understandable phenomenon, particularly for young women. And it just doesn't sell very well when you're trying to have a discussion, particularly with young men, about campus culture and how they participate in it. And so we're sort of trying to find a way to communicate that. But it's a really real thing. And the more I talk to young women about it, and I'm interested in you two's opinions, the more I get very, very heartfelt, very genuine emotional responses. And they sum to, I'm scared. I'm scared. And I don't think as a big guy that I've ever realized until a couple of years ago what that feels like. And I think we need to start these conversations with our kids and with other people from a perspective of understanding the fear, not just the anger that young women feel about it, but the fear.
That's and I want to set up the discussion, though. We do have Taryn and we do have Sarah. So we need
Taryn.
Okay.
I'm Sarah.
I know. When people hear this, we need to kind of identify who is speaking. So let's go right ahead, Taryn.
I was just going to say that's a great point that you brought up, Dr. West, about pointing out the fear of the situation, and not as a survivor, obviously, there is always that fear there and always that anxiety in certain ways, but even if you haven't experienced it, just because it is a great thing, it has become a hot topic issue. And I think it's great that you have been able to connect with students going into college and continuing to do so, because no matter how much you prepare yourself for another monument in your life, you never know what it's going to be like until it happens. And there are always extemporaneous circumstances that you can't control, but we can control our behavior and we can control cultural change.
I mean, I think we have to broaden the definition of this. Is the other problem with the term rape culture, is because rape has a very specific meaning, and what we're using in the book is what we call low consent culture, where the idea of really consent and what does it mean to say yes to a sexual experience or expression, and are we really saying yes because we mean it, or because there's pressure, or because there's a social cultural paradigm for it. And we're trying to help people to explore that with their kids and with each other. But it isn't even for people who haven't even experienced an assault. There's still a culture of fear around that, and I've been kind of horrified. I was talking to my wife about it this morning. I've been kind of horrified the more I kind of bring this up with young women, the number of stories that just pour out, and not rapes, not necessarily even what would count legally as a sexual assault, but just meanness.
I think that low consent it helps explain that it's blurred.
Right.
And it also doesn't just put, no one's trying to throw males under the bus, but that rape culture can seemingly do so. But gender equality is important, and this change is important as well. I like that term a lot.
Yeah, I think rape culture has definitely become a buzzword that people throw out all the time and not necessarily understand the implications or the actual definition of. So I think it's really important that we redefine this, what it means that we normalize low consent on our college campuses through alcohol and hookup culture.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that it will make it less polarized for young men that are in college that hear rape culture and then, maybe immediately go on the defensive and do things that are a little bit outlandish against that, and because they feel attacked. And no, obviously this is all about not feeling attacked, not feeling like there's a predator after you, and that term, I think, should really spread.
Yeah. Well, and it's a lot of the problem is in just common interaction. That I've been kind of astounded at the number of times most young women have had somebody, and I want to be clear. I know young women who have been sexually mistreated by other women, and I know men that have been sexually mistreated by women.
Of course.
But the fear, because women are in a physically one down position, is greater. And I think we have to really understand that. I'm really a fan of women being tough and strong and standing up for what is right for them. But I think it's easy to then believe that is a true defense against harm, and it's still easy to be harmed and to be treated in a harmful way.
That is a great point.
Yeah, and I think people just I can't almost believe some of this now that I begin to open this up with kids. How often one is waiting tables and a guy comes up and just reaches around and grabs your breast. What in the world? And it's not like every day, but you only have to have that happen once or twice.
I mean, Sarah, and if you went out half a dozen times, would you say that you'd probably be grabbed or touched in a way that would make you uncomfortable? I know I can say yes at least once.
I'd say about 90% of the time I am sexually harassed in some way when I go out with my friends, whether it's verbal or physical.
And this is not uncommon. The thing that concerns me is it's very easy to say, well, they're out in club clothes, and so they've got it hanging out, and that means it's fair to grab. This is not true.
Even just moving traffic along whenever bars are busy, men, younger and or older, will put their hand on the small of your back, and even just that, right? That's not okay. And yet, I'm one who gets defensive about that because, like you said, that fear is there, and I will turn on and be like, you can say, "Excuse me, there's no, you don't have to touch me," but. Like you said, it's hard to talk about, but it is so important to talk about so that we can continue this really strong change that needs to and is happening.
And let me talk about that for a second. I think a lot of men, and I would be one of them, would not know that if, it's common to sort of touch someone to move past them. But here's the problem with that I don't think people understand, because that sounds petty until you understand the rest of the story, and that can be part of an introductory process. So if I touch you that way, I'm going to see how you react, and then if you don't say, "Yo, don't do that," then I'm going to see if I can touch you a little differently until it's really an incursion. And again, the danger in the conversation always becomes then guys get mad and the neural pathways in their head turn off and don't want to hear any more of this. And I don't think this is, particularly when we talk about predation, we talk about people looking to be predators. That exists, but the vast majority of people who are doing this are not conscious of this being such a hurtful thing.
But that's maybe the problem.
Yes,
they don't understand that their claims on our body are actually a big deal, and what they do to us is actually a big deal.
Yeah, and I just wish everybody, that's so well put, and I wish everybody would hear that, not as a demand, but as a plea to say, our bodies belong to us, and ask, and we just are not doing a good job of that.
Yeah, Wes just actually bought me a shirt, and and on the front of it says, "We are not things," and I think that's so important.
This comes from Mad Max Fury Road, and it's the tagline in there: "We are not things." The women are proclaiming this.
I mean, it's very true. If I were bars are always busy, and whenever I'm getting past someone, yes, it's natural to be touching or something like that. But like you said, a lot of people aren't necessarily even conscious that they're doing something, and that's why I like the low consent term, because it basically reinforces, I should say, the golden rule. So women don't really go around, and I'm making a hasty generalization here, but for purposes, putting their hands on the small of men's back in general. And doing so, yeah, like you said, that would be an introductory thing. And so we're not trying to get everybody to, get tightened up and keep your hands all like really, really close to yourself, keep your hands all clasped, but keep yourself physically aware as well as mentally aware.
Yeah, I don't think you should ever touch a woman as casually as you touch like the counter of a bar.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Great analogy.
And
It's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
So this is 1320 KLWN. Depend on it. Quick look at the forecast today. High about 85 coming up tomorrow. You're talking, now, we have these two, I'll call them kids, but obviously adults, but one just graduated college, one is just finished up her first year of college. Is this something that can be addressed back in high school?
It has to be. Our point in the book is that you start having conversations about sexuality and consent about 8 minutes after your kid pops out of the womb.
Yes.
These have to be common conversations. I don't like to just brag on my parenting, but my daughter and I were going into college the other day. She goes to JUCO, and we were having she was like, well, now this whole thing about non-binary gender. What is up with that? And if you're transgender, then if you're dating somebody who's this is also male, are you gay or straight? And just have it. And this is just like a normal conversation. Now, sure, she has a parent who's a psychologist and a sex therapist, but that doesn't mean that the conversation is a natural conversation unless you had started having that when you're young. And this is no more difficult to talk about than the Royals winning or losing, or Cleveland being a cool downtown city with a good basketball team. These are just conversations you prepare yourself to have. One of the things we're going to do in the book is just script it out for people. We understand it's uncomfortable. Great. We're just going to script it out, and you can sit there and read what we suggest and tailor it into your conversation with kids. And if you start out early, that gets better. You also have to talk about it. The core element of sexuality has to be consent. This is something, oddly, that is not in the literature right now, and Sarah and I are going to fix that. But it's everything about that. And instead we tell kids, no, don't have sex, or no, don't be involved with people. This has never worked. 95% of all adults alive today had sex outside of marriage. And yet we hang in here with this abstinence-based education that has no impact on anyone. Where kids learn about sex is on the internet and from each other. And some of that's pretty good information, and some of it's pretty terrible information. And so if we're not involved as parents in that conversation to help them be consumers of information, they learn things like touch girls like they're the counter of a bar. That's sort of how they teach each other. Or young women do not learn that they can say no.
Yeah, we were talking earlier before we came on air about a Netflix documentary. It happened here. Sarah and I have both seen it. And in that, there are members of not just fraternities, but also sororities chanting out the acronym of the word rape and basically saying that like you said, young women don't learn it. And starting out early with your child makes it less uncomfortable and less complicated later on to explain. Because if you're trying to explain, like you were saying, the spectrum of the LGBTQ community,
right? If
you started that out in preschool versus when someone's 21, how much simpler is that going to be during the duration of their life?
Well, and if you don't, the really interesting thing is, I guarantee you nowadays, a lot of middle schoolers, if not most, are smarter about sexuality than their parents are. I cannot believe the change in the last 3 or 4 years. Kids that I didn't even used to see middle school kids very much. That wasn't an interesting area for me. They come in all the time now, and they have all this language. They can talk you under the bus, I guarantee you, because they know they've learned all this stuff, and they're very smart about it. They may not be practicing any sexual activity at this point, but they have all this knowledge. And parents have to. Yeah, well, and it's more so now. Yeah, it's more so now. And parents have to be able to be conversant in that, even if it's uncomfortable, or someone else is going to have the conversation with kids, and they may not like who that is.
And it might not be the right conversation.
Exactly.
Well, we've run out of time, even though this is a great topic that I think we need to discuss more of. down the line, especially when the book does come
Yeah,
out.
we'll do it.
When do you think that book might come out? Am I
That
pressuring you now?
depends on whether Sarah is doing her tasks
Well,
now.
Sarah
Yeah.
also has to go to Cornell
Yeah.
and study and have fun.
That's silly.
You tell him.
silly. We want to have it out by the first of the year. That's
Okay.
our goal at this
All right.
point. And we're hopefully the hardest part is an audiobook, trying to get an audiobook out. So we're going to hopefully do that over Christmas.
Right. Sarah, do you drive to Cornell or do you have...
I think we're driving this
Okay,
year.
see, audiobook, right? That's good for long drives, right? Yeah, that's a good one.
It's
All right.
not the listening that's hard; it's the making.
You're
we
right.
look forward to having both of you back to talk more
Yeah,
about this
we'll
subject,
do it.
certainly.
We'll do it.
Dr. West, how can people learn more about you? Then?
drwest.com, and we have lots of resources and a lot of shows we've done on these kinds of topics. If parents want to learn more about how to work on this, we have plenty of media resources on there that we've had over the years, and we're going to be starting a national blog here. We'll know more about what the actual address is going to be as I wind down the column. We're going to move to a blog. So.
Okay. Now it's Dr. There's a hyphen in there, right?
Yeah,
or
it's
else you're
D-
going to get a different doctor.
Yeah, it's dr-west.com. The other Dr. West will give you a colonoscopy. So
Okay.
choose wisely. is
Make sure
my
you type in
opinion.
DR.
Yeah, choose
right.
wisely.
Wes.
Thank you, Dr. West. Sarah, thank you for coming
Thank
in.
you.
Taryn, thanks for helping out here on this segment.